Ashley Borden is Hollywood's fitness trainer to the star. She has trained big names like Cristina Aguilera, Ryan Gosling, Mandy Moore, many others. Her unique approach to fitness, however, can be attributed to having tackled her own personal struggles along her way. Welcome, Ashley. So what kind of role did fitness play in your life as a child growing up?
I grew up around a very athletic health food family. So my mom owned a health food store for 11 years. My dad owned sporting goods stores. So I grew up in the 80s where health food wasn't as popular as it is now. So of course I was like the person that nobody wanted to share their lunches with because I had like 20 grain bread and natural, carob chips and Sprouts, which I'm still traumatized by. But I feel like growing up with that made me the almost opposite because I was not allowed to have sugar. My mom thought she was doing the right thing by being super healthy, but it was, I feel, a little bit too extreme. And I grew up with a father that was very athletic, very competitive. I was a dancer. So even though a dancer is athletic in a way, it wasn't athletic where I was like good at tennis or good at bowling. So, that kind of stuff growing up, I always kind of disappointed my dad because I wasn't super athletic and I always wanted to impress him.
Did you think you were disappointing him or did he verbally tell you? Because I know there's that story where he showed you a cover of a magazine of a woman and said, here, this is what you should look like.
Yes, my dad, rest his soul, but my dad brought me to bodybuilding competitions when I was little. And I'm talking, 8, 9, 10 years old with my brother. And when he said to me at one point, he got Rachel McLish, who is the bodybuilder, he got this book, and it was her bodybuilding book, and he gave it to me, and he said, look at that, that's what you should look like. And I was, I think 10 or 11 years old, and I looked at this, and I was like, this is what I'm supposed to look like? And it was so foreign to me, but I so wanted to, impress him, and I so wanted him to give me that, you did great, you did so good, and I never really got that from him, which I think is a big motivating factor when I was a lot younger for me to really excel in becoming a better athlete, and which is, I think...
At 10?
At 10, yeah. I mean, it was very competitive in my family. My brother was a really good athlete, and I was a dancer, so I didn't know how to run. I came from a family of runners. My mom was a marathon runner. My brother was cross country, and nobody ever taught me how to run, which until I became a trainer, I didn't even know that you could be taught how to run correctly.
Yeah.
But you started abusing your body at that young age because you didn't know exactly how to get that body. So, not through exercise. What did you do? Stop eating?
I mean, I think a big part of it was because I was a dancer, and I was a dancer because I loved it. I wasn't a dancer because I thought I was fat or I wanted to lose weight. And when I got into high school, because I was dancing and doing all this beforehand, and I was always in a leotard and super comfortable in it. So when I got into high school, that was a big part of the attention was about my body and the way my body looked. And I had no idea that I had a good body when I was in high school, whatever that means. And there was so much attention on it that I thought, I don't even know how this even happened. How am I gonna keep it? All right, I'm just gonna stop eating. I should just stop eating then, and that's the way to keep it. So it almost became like this, and now, as an adult looking back on it, I'm like, I wish I had listened to my mom, who was trying to help me, but I was not eating.
You became anorexic?
I became anorexic. I was really living on the two worst things, and were popcorn and coffee, which, I mean, no wonder why I couldn't focus in school. I couldn't pay attention. I had no amino acids in my body to...
Well, how long did this go on, and where did you get down to?
I was not really weighing myself as often as I did when I became bulimic. So I think my lowest was probably around 110 or 112 at that age. And the progression to that was just, it was also the mental part of it. And that's a big part. A lot of people say they look at somebody and they say, well, she doesn't look like she has an eating disorder. When I was in high school, nobody knew because it was very secret to me. They just thought I was kind of aloof and into the theater crowd, and I didn't hang out with a lot of people. I isolated a lot. And I was miserable. And I think that that's such an important part of identifying with especially younger kids, how depressed and miserable they can get. And my way of the flip-flop of it is after the anorexia, which always happens, it flip-flops into overeating. So then when I became a senior in high school, I was bulimic and I was throwing up. And it got really bad at the end of my senior year, where I was not leaving my house, and I was lying to my mom. My parents were divorced, so I was living with my mom, and that was the beginning of the end for me. It was a really dark time, and again, like I said, I was very isolated. I didn't talk about it with a lot of people.
Any suicidal thoughts?
Yeah, I was very suicidal as far as the way I felt, that there was no way. I remember thinking, how does anybody live like this? I mean, I could barely even get dressed, let alone get a job and leave my house. And I was just kind of at the end of it.
So what did you do to turn it around?
I finally said something to my mom, and I actually came to her room and I told her that I had been throwing up, and I had thrown up a couple times, and she said to me, BS, I think it's more than that. And I said, meh, you know, I just started crying, and I said, you know, I need help. And, you know, it just makes me, I feel so sad also for the other kids and high school kids when I see that, because it's that breakthrough to finally being able to ask for help was the biggest breakthrough for me. My mom actually got me into a 12-step treatment center. And I had no idea what 12-step treatment centers or 12-step program was. And the basis of my treatment, I was an inpatient for a month and a half, and it was through Overeaters Anonymous was my recovery. And Overeaters Anonymous is overeating, bulimia, anorexia, compulsive exercise, compulsive eating, all of that. And that's really where I started my life, was when I went into treatment.
But you went into treatment, you almost left the very first night you were there.
Yes.
You called your mom and said, I don't really belong here.
Yes.
Your mama was going to come and get you.
Yes, well, it's funny, they give you a sheet when you check in, and he gave me this guy, the doctor gave me a sheet. He's like, you're going to go through all these phases when you get here. And of course, I was so, as I say, terminally unique. I was like, no, I'm not. Give me that sheet. So I got the sheet, and I went home that night, and my mom brought me home. I binged and purged all night long. It was horrible. I said, I'm ready to go back. I went in. The second night I was there, I said, I don't belong here. I am not as sick as these people. They're all dually addicted. And I looked at the sheet and it says, doesn't feel like they belong here, wants to leave on the first night. I was like, what? And I did. I wanted to leave. I called my mom. She said, I'll come get you, which was the best thing she did, because if she said no, I would have left. And by the end of the next night, I had a friend that convinced me to stay, and I stayed, and it was the best thing I ever did. The best thing I ever did. It was the hardest thing I ever did. It was the most amount of work I've ever done on myself, but I wanted to get better, and that's what I did.
That's the secret right there. You wanted to get better, and that's such a good point, because if I had been forced to do it, it would never have worked, and I just wanted to get better.